In my quest to rediscover my love of music now in middle age, I decided that I'm going to listen through Rolling Stone's list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. And now that I've listened to a good chunk of them, I've started to realize that not all of them are actually very good. And I made a video last week talking about from the first 50 albums on that list, albums 500 through 451, there were 8 that I scored either a 1 or a 2 out of 5. But I ended that video by saying that I'd come back and do a video talking about the 10 albums from that same chunk of the list that I actually really did like. So here I am fulfilling that promise. Because really, even though there are some albums on this list that I just question, it is full of amazing music. But before I get started, just a few caveats here. I, first of all, am not a professional music critic, and I'm not trying to portray myself as one. I'm not trying to act like I am one. These are entirely my subjective reactions to these albums. Again, as I said, as someone who is trying to rediscover my own love of music and sharing that journey here. Because I spent a whole lot of time not listening to much music. As much as I grew up loving music, I went to college for a couple years for music. Music was my life. And then I hit a period of just not listening to it. So this journey is just me trying to absorb as much new to me music as possible and sharing that experience. And even though an album might be considered one of the greatest albums of all time, it might not speak to me. And so that's what I'm sharing. In that last video, I talked about those albums that didn't speak to me, but here today, these are the albums that I loved. The second caveat is just about my rating scale. So as I'm listening to these albums, I'm rating them on a scale of just 1 to 5, where it's not really very specifically defined. It's more of a subjective reaction. I do have a little bit of a rubric that I use, but otherwise it's generally just, if I gave it a 4, that means I really liked it. I connected with it on some level. It was something that was interesting and engaging and I enjoyed. But a 5 is something that I had a really deep, significant connection to. It blew me away. It gave me goosebumps, and it's something that is now heavily in my regular rotation of music that I'm listening to on a daily basis. And from this list, from the first 50 albums on this list of the greatest albums of all time, I have 10 albums that I gave either a 4 or a 5. I gave 7 albums a 4 and 3 albums a 5, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with the 4s. All right, so the first 4 that I have came in at number 491 on the list, and it's the Harry Styles album, Harry's House. And this album, and I think this is going to be a running theme through this video, this album surprised me. There's a couple of common themes that I'll probably bring up here. This album surprised me because of my prior experience with pop music. Like, I grew up in the, with the pop music of the 90s and the early 2000s, which in my memory and my experience was like the bubblegum pop, the boy bands, the NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and 98 Degrees, and then the Christina Aguilera's and Britney Spears. And it was always, to me, more of a commodity than an art. And for that reason, I never really appreciated it. And right or wrong, and I know now wrongly, that's the perception of pop music that I've carried forward until today. Until I listened to this album, this Harry Styles album. This album just really, there are a couple albums later on in this list. I don't know that I'll bring any of them up here, but there are a few albums on this list that have really changed my opinion and my approach to listening to pop music. And it really started with this album. I came into this thinking this was going to be some, music by committee thing where, they write to a formula that they know is going to create pop hits and sell records, and that's it. Again, the commodity over art sort of thing. But this wasn't that. Like, this album has feel and soul and funk and a vibe. And this album was the first album on the list that got me to look into an entirely new genre of music that I had never heard, because as I was looking into this album after I listened and enjoyed it, I had seen that he was heavily influenced and really enjoys Japanese city pop, which was new to me. So I looked that up and looked into it. And I've kind of gotten into that, found a few playlists that I've really enjoyed. So this album, 491, Harry Styles' album, Harry's House, was the first number 4 out of 5 that I gave. All right, next up was a few albums later. It came in at number 485 on the list, and this is the Richard and Linda Thompson album, I Want to See the Bright Lights Tonight. And again, that theme of I didn't know what to expect, but the other theme that's going to come up pretty regularly here is I didn't know who these people were. I had never heard of this before. And so not only did I not know what to expect, I didn't know what to expect because I didn't know the names. I had never heard of Richard and Linda Thompson before. And I turned it on and I was really into it. And it became clear pretty quickly. It's kind of a folk album, it came out in the 70s, but it was this really interesting mix of, kind of modern folk, but with some like British and almost Celtic folk music mixed in there too, but also with a little bit of, modern, 70s modern rock style in it as well. It was a lot of fun. It was really great to listen to. But I think the thing that really drew me in with this album was the lyrical themes. I really appreciated the lyrical themes with this album. It was a very bleak condemnation of modern society. It's a lot of it is about how we fail people, how we let people live these lives of desperation. We could be helping them and we're choosing not to. It's not a very bright album. It's a little bit of a downer, but I really enjoyed it. I particularly liked the song Down Where the Drunkards Roll. It's kind of simple, sparse, I guess I would say, but it tells such an effective story and is just a beautiful song to listen to. After that, we jump down to number 476, which is the Sparks album, Kimono My House. And again, didn't know who this was going into this, never heard of Sparks before, didn't know what to expect, what kind of music to expect going into this. And I ended up really liking it. This was a wild album. I think if I had to summarize this sound now, so Sparks, like this album was a kind of a late 70s I think, rock album, but to me it was like if you took if you had Rush and Queen and they had a baby and then you turn the theatrics up even an extra few notches, you would get this album. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed listening to this. I have this thing where I like to listen to things that have a lot going on, but sometimes that walks the line, that it crosses over from being interestingly complex to just unnecessarily complicated. Like there's a lot of things that I've listened to that people have enjoyed and said like, oh, listen to all the things that they're doing. And to me, there's a line there somewhere between something being interestingly complex but and unnecessarily complicated. And this album really kind of walked that line for me. It was complicated. It was a little out there at times, but they always found a way to bring it back to a solid base, and I really enjoyed that. The songs they have a lot going on, but they're catchy and they're easy to listen to. If you like 70s theatrical rock music, I highly encourage you checking out this album, which is Kimono My House by the band Sparks. And then we jump down just a couple of notches to number 472, which is the album Control by SZA. And I had heard the name SZA before. I had a vague understanding of who she was, but I didn't really know her music. And this one, again, kind of like the Harry Styles album, really surprised me with how much I ended up really liking it. I when I first listened to it, the first 3 or so songs I didn't quite get, but by the fourth song on the album, I was into it, and the entire rest of the album, I was all in. I had headphones on. It was just a cool vibe. I was enjoying it and just getting into it the whole time. I even, subsequently since then, I've gone back and re-listened to this album a few times to see, like, is there really something with those first 3 or 4 songs that I didn't really care for? But there's not. Re-listening to it now, I get into those songs just as much as I do the rest of them. Maybe I just wasn't in the right headspace for it the first time I listened to it, but listening to it now, it's great stuff. I really like the mix of the vibe of like singer-songwriter, but also kind of hip-hop leaning. Like I said, I'm trying to rediscover music after a pretty long break of not really having listened to much music, and especially not listening to new music. So SZA is somebody that's come along in the time that I wasn't really listening to music. And to me, even though this album is, 8 years old, something like that now, to me, this felt fresh and new and interesting and exciting. I really enjoyed this album. Uh, I think everybody should check this one out. And now we're on to number 476, which is the Maxwell album, Black Summer's Night. And this was another one that I had heard of the name Maxwell before, but I didn't really know what to expect with this. I didn't have much experience. I knew he was kind of in the realm of R&B, that sort of thing, but this isn't something that I had a whole lot of context for. I'm not very well versed. I'm not very highly experienced with listening to R&B music. So I didn't really have anything to compare this to judge it against, but listening to this album standing on its own, I really liked it. This one I really appreciated the mix of live instrumentation and more programmed elements, which is something again that I have found now coming back to music that I really appreciate. Having that, I'm not against the more produced, more highly produced music that seems to be more popular now compared to the stuff that I grew up listening to, where it was people in a band playing instruments, and that was the stuff that I grew up on. I'm not against the newer, more highly produced things that you can do on a computer with synthesizers and MIDI keyboards and all of that. I like that, but I particularly liked how this album really kind of blended the two really well. And he's just got such a great voice. He really just has a great voice. There's a lot of layered pieces that make this album really interesting, really interesting to re-listen to. Like every time I've listened to this album again, I can find new sounds that are enjoyable. I think the one thing that knocks this album down from a 5 to a 4 for me is just that it's so short. Like, I think it's just over 30 minutes long, 35 minutes long, something like that. If he would have given us, 3 more songs, like 10 or 12 more minutes, this would probably be a 5. But as it is, it's a 4. It's a fantastic album and very worth checking out. All right, 2 more 4s here before we get to the 5s. This one is number 459, and it's the Kid Cudi album, Man on the Moon, The End of Day. And this is another one, again, that has come along in the time that I wasn't really listening to music. And so for me, even though this one came out in 2009, so this is, 15, going on 20 years old, this album, I really, really got a lot out of it. My experience with hip hop, just like with R&B, is very limited. Like I know some of the bigger names in hip hop and rap from when I was younger, Eminem and Dr. Dre and Biggie and Tupac and Snoop and like that sort of thing. But anything newer than that really is beyond me. Though I will say, after having listened to this, I've listened to some more Kid Cudi, and I've also been lately getting into Mac Miller. That I've really enjoyed some Mac Miller lately. That's been good stuff. But coming into this album felt like emo rap to me, which is not a bad thing. I kind of enjoyed that. It felt very, I don't know if I want to say angsty, but confessional, right? Like he was unsure of himself. He's trying to find himself, maybe having some issues with self-confidence. But I think what makes this album interesting is it kind of tells the story, to me, it tells the story of his confidence growing over the course of the album. It starts out, the songs are a little bit more vulnerable and timid in the early part of the album, but as it goes, it gets bigger. It gets more exciting, and you can hear him growing in his confidence throughout the album, and that was something that I really appreciated. I've gone back and re-listened to this a few times. I haven't listened to any other Kid Cudi albums, so if you have any recommendations for other Kid Cudi albums that I should be listening to, leave a comment, let me know what should I be listening to from Kid Cudi, because I really liked this album and I should probably be listening to more. But that's number 459 and my 6th out of 7 4s. So let's get on to that one last 4 before we get to the 5s. And my last 4 is wild. This came in at number 454 on the list, and it's from the band Can, and the album, I think it's called Ege Bamyasi. I think, could be wrong about that, I don't know. this was my introduction to krautrock. So this is a German band from the 70s. This was really cool. And again, kind of like I said with Sparks, this album kind of walks that line between interestingly complex and unnecessarily complicated. This, to me, stays more in the interestingly complex realm. It doesn't get unnecessarily complicated to me. This album just wanders around, but it always has a solid foundation to come back to that I got this album. I loved this album. I really had a lot of fun listening to it. And there's just so much going on. I don't know what else I can say about this one. This is just a very good album. But again, I've tried to listen to other Can albums, and they've been fine. Nothing like this. But krautrock in particular is something that I'm interested in trying to discover some more of. So if you have any krautrock recommendations, leave a comment for that too, please. And so that's all of my 4s, and now we'll check out the 5s that I have on this list. And these, again, are albums that just absolutely floored me. Albums that are in my current rotation heavily, albums that I will regularly listen to from now on. And my first one, the first album on this list that I gave a 5, is going to be the one that fulfills the basic white guy stereotype for me here, because this album is number 486, and it's the John Mayer album, Continuum. This album is just perfect for me. This is a perfect album for me. So I was raised on the blues. I was raised on this kind of music. I was raised on particularly, Allman Brothers and all of their various related bands. Government Mule was always a big one, still is a big one. The blues and this sort of thing is just where my musical journey began. So this album to me is just, it's phenomenal. And this is actually the only album on the list so far out of the first 50 albums that I have a significant familiarity with and have regularly listened to in the past. It's not one that I've listened to lately. It's probably been 15 years since I've really listened to this album, but I remember when this album came out, and I remember having it and listening to it and enjoying it. But when it first came out, I was in my early mid 20s, something like that. I enjoyed it back then because this was kind of his coming out album. This album was a bit more serious and mature and less of the poppy stuff that he had been doing before this. This album isn't Your Body is a Wonderland. This album is a bit more blues rock, and I enjoyed it a lot back then. But coming back to it now, listening to it now at 40 years old, there was just so much in this album that struck me and that connected with me that didn't really back when I listened to it when it first came out. Especially, lyrically, themes of aging and getting older and what that means and how we process that really kind of hit me and stuck with me. Musically, there are motifs in there that I just really connected with. And this is one of those albums that, I really believe that in order for me to give an album a 5, it has to give me the chills, at least a couple of times in the album. There have to be songs or segments of songs that really just give me goosebumps. And this album does multiple times, but none more so than Slow Dancing in a Burning Room. That song just kills me every time. And it's one of those it's interesting because, that song is about the end of a relationship, right? People breaking up and that sort of thing, which, it's something that I've experienced in the past, but at this point I've been with my wife for 16 going on 17 years, and we're happily married for almost 11 years now. This isn't an album, or this isn't a song that I necessarily connect with because it's something that I'm feeling right now. But this song, Slow Dancing in a Burning Room, has a way of making that connection to you, even if it's not something that you're currently experiencing. And that to me is a really powerful thing for a song to do, to make you feel it, even if it's not something that you're currently feeling. And this song does it for me. This album is it's great. I love this album. 5 out of 5. John Mayer's Continuum. My second five came in at number 465, and it's the King Sunny Ade album, The Best of the Classic Years. And if you listen to the podcast that I do with my friend Tyler, you'll probably come to see that I have a pretty strong opinion about the presence of anthologies and like greatest hits albums being included on the list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. I kind of don't like that they're there, but this album made me eat my words because this album is just it's it's perfect to me. If you could bottle and cork the feeling of exploring musical sounds as a part of a group of musicians, it would be this album. They just I was so taken by this album the first time I listened to it that I had to intentionally, I didn't trust my initial reaction to this. I the first time I listened to it, I was so floored by it that I didn't believe that I was reacting to it appropriately. Like I just, so I made myself wait a few days and come back to it and re-listen to it again. And I've since gone back and re-listened to it a few times, and 3 or 4 times now. And each time I expect that, like, oh, okay, maybe I was just in the right mood. It hit me at the right time the first time I listened to it. It's good, but it's not like that great. But every single time I listen to this album, I a minute into the first song and I'm just melted into my chair, just enjoying every single second of it. This is one that I think makes me appreciate listening through this list of albums the most, because this is an album that, you know, there are things on this list like Harry Styles. We've listened to like some Lady Gaga and a few other things that I have known, but probably otherwise, if it hadn't been for this list, I would have just written them off, not bothered listening to them, figured they were just, you know, pop music, not my thing, or whatever genre it is. You know, even something like Maxwell or SZA, like stuff that I really enjoyed, probably otherwise would have just said, yeah, that's not really my thing, and not given them the time, and have ended up really enjoying them. But this album, King Sunny Ade, isn't one that I would have written off. This is one that I have never been exposed to before. I've never heard of this person before, or his band. And I probably never would have come across it if it weren't for this list. And so this is one that really made me deeply appreciate what we're doing here with this project, because this is something that was entirely brand new to me, and I'm thankful for being exposed to this. And this is my second five. It's King Sunny Ade's The Best of the Classic Years. And finally, my last number five, my third five, the 10th out of 10 on this list today. This album is, you know, if I had to pick one album to keep and I had to get rid of all the rest of them from the list so far, this is the album that I would keep. This is the album that I would hold and listen to for the rest of my life, and will be listening to this album for the rest of my life, because it just was immaculate. It's an immaculate album to me, and it came in at number 458 on the list, and it's the album Southeastern by Jason Isbell. This took me by surprise too, because I kind of the same thing with pop music. I had an opinion of country music. And earlier on this list, I didn't talk about it on this list of top albums because it wasn't a top album, but earlier on the list of 500 albums, we had listened to a Miranda Lambert album, The Weight of These Wings. And I came out of that feeling like my opinion of modern country music had been reinforced, that it's just not for me. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with it, but it's not my kind of thing. It's a little too poppy. It's you know, placating a certain aesthetic that feels fake to me. I didn't really care for it. So then we got to this album. I'm like, oh, okay, another country album, country-ish album. But I was wrong. I was immensely wrong. This album just killed me. And when I say, you know, I think an album has to have at least a couple of songs. In order for me to give it a 5, it has to have at least a few moments where it really just gives me the chills, gives me the goosebumps. This album is just one after another of songs that do that for me. The song Elephant is just a devastating song, just a devastating song, and it's simple, but it's beautiful. I mean, I had listened to this album. I have since I first heard this album. The first time I listened to it was probably 4 or 5 months ago now, and I've re-listened to it very regularly since then. And even recently, I put this on when I was driving. I had my son in the back seat, and we were driving somewhere. And this album, I put this album on, and Elephant, the song from this album, came on. I'm just driving along, normal Saturday afternoon, driving, going somewhere with my son, and this song almost had me in tears. It's just a devastatingly beautiful, just amazing song. But it's that traveling alone, flying over water, Live Oak, like they're just so many, so many good songs on this album. And to me, this is start to finish, no skips, immaculate album. It's 458 on the list. It's Jason Isbell's Southeastern. I highly, especially if you think you have an opinion of country music, this is one to check out. And that's it. The 10 albums that I scored either a 4 or a 5 from the first 50 or so of Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time. But now it's your turn. Let me know what you think of these albums. Take a look at the list. Is there anything on that list that you think I should have given a 4 or a 5? Let me know. Leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be coming out with more music content at least every week, if not more often, doing music reaction videos to things that people are recommending I listen to. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm sharing this journey and would love to have you come along for the ride. But until next time, I'm Kyle, and I've got some music to listen to.